As a confidence coach in Calgary who works with businesses and individuals, I have seen that confidence looks different for everyone. In this podcast, we explore confidence through the eyes of our diverse community, redefining it one conversation at a time. Welcome to Confidence Redefined. I'm your host, Alyssa McMasters. Today, we are sitting down with Mackenzie, owner and founder of the Human Experience Clinic. Mackenzie is on a mission to cut through the noise of fleeting health trends and vague wellness advice. Frustrated by the rise of influencers promoting ineffective health fads and individuals being dismissed with normal lab results despite ongoing symptoms, she is committed to providing real solutions and empowering her clients to take control of their health. As a Doctor of Acupuncture, Mackenzie earned her doctorate from the CCT-CMA in Calgary, building on her foundation in Kinesiology from the University of Alberta. Her practice focuses on addressing root causes of health concerns, from hormonal imbalances and digestive disorders to skin conditions and nervous system dysregulation. Mackenzie works in conjunction with conventional medical care to optimize health and promote sustainable long-term results. Mackenzie's approach is grounded in professionalism, compassion, and a dedication to making wellness accessible for all ages. She is redefining how people understand and achieve health, helping them feel better, move better, and live better every day. Welcome, Mackenzie. Hi, Mackenzie. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I am so great. I am so glad that you're here because you are my Doctor of Acupuncture, and you have single-handedly changed my life.
Thank you.
Now, the reason why I really wanted to bring you in today and why I thought you'd be a great guest for this podcast is to talk a lot about hormones, because we hear all of these buzzwords. We hear like, oh, we need to increase your estrogen or testosterone. And we hear this like hormones are going to affect everything. But I don't really know if we know why it's important or like how we can actually use our hormones for us, specifically when it regards to confidence. Does that sound exciting?
Yeah, absolutely. I was hoping you wanted me here to talk about poop because poop is my favorite thing. Next up is hormones though, so I'm glad I'm here.
I mean, I also want to talk about poop. And something I love about you is, again, you started your own clinic, but originally you also alongside have this like really beautiful, robust social media where you post everything that people don't want to talk about, like poop, like hormones, like discharge, like all the things that feel kind of taboo. You talk about them in a way that just feels very open and feels very matter of fact, because our poop tells us a lot.
Totally. I always felt like people talk a lot. They talk, always on social media. We're always chitter-chattering, but the things that really matter aren't being talked about, right? Like the poop, like the discharge. There's so much about our bodies that we actually could figure out by just having conversations about it and normalizing these things. So yeah, my social media is all about poop and all these kind of taboo health topics that no one wants to have conversation about, but we all go through. We all poop like 0 to 3 times a day. Like it's all things that we all go through. And the more we learn about it and the more that we can kind of tap into that, the better we can know ourselves and the better we can show up to the world.
Yeah. And I started coming to you because I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disease that affects the thyroid. And my doctor is wonderful. And I went to my doctor and they said, yeah, like here's this medication. And I was like, there's just more. I feel like I need to do more. And you, within a couple months, like helped me bring down a lot of my anxiety, a lot of my hormones really leveled out. My hormones became totally like basically normal, which is exciting. And I think it's such an exciting thing to work alongside like medical doctors and then also like Chinese medicine doctors like yourself.
Yeah, I agree. There is a time and a place for all sorts of medicine. And if we can work together in like a big system on each of the patients, it's so beautiful. We need, if you break your arm, don't come see me. Things like that, you kind of know where you stand. So how I practice and what I believe in is optimizing the human body. So we have this giant reference range that is, all kind of North America wide, and it's what physicians typically go off of with abnormal and normal lab work. And then there's optimization of those levels. So when you brought in your levels, I'm like, Kate, you have been abnormal before in traditional testing, but we want to really optimize your levels. And so I take your numbers through your blood work, and we want to bring you to an optimal area where you can conceive, you can have energy, you can feel good about yourself, and be a good wife and be a good mother, and to really get your body to that ideal area.
And I feel like so many of us are just told that like feeling kind of crappy is normal, right? We're like, oh, well, that's just normal. You're aging. Or I've been told a lot, oh, well, if you lose 10 pounds, you'll probably feel better. When in reality, I find out later, 5-10 years later, that I'm like, no, there actually was something wrong the whole time. And after starting working with you, I just felt 1,000 times better. And when we feel better in our bodies, we can be more confident as employees, as mothers, as friends. I think it's so important that we look at our bodies and ourselves holistically. How do you think your work really can help people with their confidence?
So the biggest thing I kind of want people to take away from today's episode would be that a lot of different things that we feel are common. So, you having like low energy, the weight gain, a lot of that can be common, but it's not normal. And so a lot of these things, like heavy periods, painful periods, stuff like that, people have really started to normalize it, and like it's not normal.
How does that pertain to confidence?
Okay, so with the hormones that I work with, as much as you can do all of the things to prepare yourself to, have a good day and to show up in the world, your hormones have a massive, massive contribution to how you show up in this world. So, and we'll go into them more into the episode with like your different thyroid hormones, your cortisol, your estrogen, progesterone. They each have different jobs, and then they have jobs together. They also work together to create this perfect system. And so when one of them's off or multiple of them are off, you don't show up as your best self.
Yeah. And Mackenzie, what made you want to get started in this area?
So for myself, I grew up having very strange health things like seizures as a kid, weird rashes, my throat closing randomly, and I would have body pain and numbness. And I just grew up from basically 0 to 17 with just kind of really strange health things. And no one can figure out what was happening. So I did, MRIs and CAT scans and all the blood work, and no one can figure out what was going on in my system. And it was a doctor of Chinese medicine who he did some further DNA testing and really put in the work to figure out what was happening in my system. So he sent off some tests to Germany and did some genetic testing, and it turns out that I'm celiac. So I test negative for celiac in traditional blood work, where when I do more genetic coding and more of that deeper level testing that we don't have access to in Canada, that's when they figured out what was really happening with me. So I thought, how can I change the system? How can I, help people? And really, unfortunately, in Canada, you kind of have to pay out of pocket for really, really in-depth healthcare. And that's where I kind of took a look of what can I do to make a difference? How can I actually change how people are feeling? And it was getting into more of a private medicine field where I could have the time and the ability to do more of that testing with patients.
That's so exciting. And tell me, obviously without names, do you have any really like big aha moments that you've seen in your clients that you really were like, I'm onto something here?
Yeah, there's been quite a few. Most of them come from years of struggling. So they've had issues for, say, one couple, for example, they had, 12 years of miscarriage after miscarriage, not being able to conceive, which is extremely damaging, right? Like they're losing their marriage. The woman, she had no confidence in who she was as a female, being able to bear children. And they came into the clinic. I said, Kate, bring all the blood work you've had done, all the specialist tests that you've kind of gone through. They brought everything in. I spent about a week going through all of their blood work, both his blood work and her blood work, going through it all. And she had never had her hormones tested. After 12 years of going through our medical system, no one had tested her hormones. So I did a hormone panel on her, figured out that she had low progesterone, which you need progesterone to have a really good, viable pregnancy. Worked on her progesterone, and boom, they were pregnant. So it's stuff like that where I look at the system and I see how it's been failing people, and it's my vocational life calling to take in people who just aren't being heard and really get down to the root of why they're feeling what they're feeling and how to treat it.
Beautiful. And I hope that my experience as well is one of your favorites as well.
Obviously.
I mean, I'm not your favorite client, but I've had so much fun with you. And you really have opened my eyes to like a lot of different ways that we can do things. Yeah. And again, it's not against the medical field. Nope, it's just alongside. Not. And that's really exciting to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yay. So now you show up again so authentically on social media. Have you always had the confidence to show up as yourself, or did something click for you?
I've always been weird, and that's kind of been the word that people described me. Always just very strange and weird. As a kid, I would like sift through animal poop outside and pretend I'm like a scientist, and I just have always been very strange. And I've been very, very blessed to have a family that's always celebrated that. There's never really been anyone in my life who's really shut that down. I've always been celebrated in that weird way, which is amazing. Having a really good support system to kind of honor who you are and encourage that has been everything. So I feel like I've always been very strange, but it hasn't been till I've been in my practice and I've seen that, by me being weird or being really just myself, it really makes a difference in other people. If I kind of try showing up as, being a watered down version of somebody else, I don't make a big of an impact. It's when I am true to myself and I just let that weirdness radiate, or whatever you want to call it, is when I really make an impact.
And how do you ensure that you're showing up authentically in that way? Or does it come naturally to you?
It does come naturally. I feel like I can feel when I'm around somebody who I start kind of feeling like I'm being a chameleon. I just take a little tab of who and kind of where I'm at when those feelings start coming back up. And then I avoid those situations as best as possible. If I'm meet somebody and I feel like I have to be someone differently, then that's not my person, right? So I really have a strong circle of people in my life, like you, for example, that I can say and be and wear whatever I want to be. And I know that I'll be seen for who I truly am.
I love that, is acknowledging when you're acting like a chameleon, when you start like saying things that you're like, this actually doesn't align with my values or like really who I am. Yeah. And sometimes we get lost in it, especially when we're younger and we just like haven't really had that experience yet. I always say to people and my clients in high school, I'm like, listen, like you right now can't really pick your friends because you're around them every day. Soon you're gonna be able to pick whoever you want to be around. Yeah. And that's a really exciting thing. But acknowledging when that little switch happens, do you have like a certain tell that happens?
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to it's called a somatic technique. So it's knowing when you're in your sympathetic nervous system and when you're in your parasympathetic. So typically when you're in your parasympathetic, your rest and digest, your healing, you want your neck to be on your body. If you become like a turtle, you're in your sympathetic and you're out of your body. And I can really feel that difference is when I'm talking to somebody and now my neck's poking out. I know that I'm in my sympathetic. I'm not aligned to myself. Where I come back into my parasympathetic, my neck is aligned. That's when I feel more of myself. So I call it like my little turtleneck. And that's that somatic kind of indication of what nervous system I'm living in.
That's a really interesting thing to start kind of acknowledging. Yeah. I also find there was something interesting that I saw that like when you say you're walking on the street and you see a friend, you kind of like throw your head up and you nod up, and if you see a stranger you like nod down. And even think about it. And it's like something to do with like the neck and the nervous system there.
Yep, absolutely.
So pay attention to your neck. Very cool.
And
then you started your own clinic. A lot that can be really scary. What did that look like, starting your own practice?
I feel things so deeply. Like I just know in my gut when things are right and when things aren't right. Like it's like a all in yes or an all in no. And so during COVID, I graduated during COVID. I started my practice during COVID, and I originally wanted to travel. I'm like, I'm going to, just work for somebody, show up to work, go to the clinic, do my thing and leave. And then during COVID, I couldn't travel and do all these different crazy things like I wanted to do in my mid-20s. So I had all the time in the world to really focus on building that practice. And with my social media being, attracting very like people and very open-minded clientele, it was awesome to start my practice alongside of my Instagram page to kind of combine them together and create this amazing experience.
Yeah. And have you always been able to kind of feel that gut when something's a yes and when something's a no?
Yeah, I feel like most of my life. I would always joke and say, because I'm celiac, that I like can't trust my gut because it can't handle like gluten and dairy and random stuff. But yeah, I've always just felt like this inner knowing if something's right and something's not.
Yeah. And is there like a physical tell there too?
Yeah, for that, like I actually can feel my gut get kind of like queasy and weird. And it's different than being excited. It's something like something's impending or something's not right. That's that feeling I get when it's a no.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to get into hormones now. Yes. I want to get into like the meat and potatoes of this because even before I started working with you and really started figuring out my hormones, I saw like the buzzwords on social media, just like, fix your hormones, and I didn't really know what it meant. So if you could like in layperson's terms explain like what hormones do and why they're important, I would love to hear that.
So hormones, they're chemical messengers, and they're produced by different glands in our body, and they go and they swim around in the bloodstream and they talk to other tissues and glands. So with these hormones, they control everything: your mood, your appetite, your sleep, basically everything. They talk to all of the tissues in your body. They control all your metabolism, your energy. They control absolutely everything. And when they're in balance, you feel amazing. When they're off, they're really off.
And what are some of those like main tells that your hormones are off? And I know that differs from people to people.
Yeah.
But is there kind of like a overreaching theme that we see?
You don't feel good, something's wrong. And in my practice, that's a huge thing where you have to be an advocate for yourself. If you go into any kind of practitioner, it doesn't matter where they're at in the hierarchy and what their training has been. If you go in and you don't feel good and they don't listen to you, find someone different. Anything that you don't feel, wake up in the morning feeling full of energy, you feel good, you're calm, then something's off. And usually that will have a hormonal component to it.
And listening to yourself and advocating.
Yes.
I think that's a big piece, right? Because
Yes.
I think we go to professionals, and whether this is the medical professional or really you go to a real estate agent, anywhere, and you just kind of assume that they know best. Especially when it comes to our body, we know best, but we just need the support in order to find what that best thing is. Yeah. And often we do have to go to like 4 or 5 different people until we find the right person for us.
No, absolutely.
So let's get into kind of like the major hormones that affect us.
Yeah. I thought today talked about more about the ones that impact confidence directly.
Beautiful.
So that's kind of what I want us to get into. So as an overview, I want to talk about some estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. It's a very kind of misunderstood hormone, cortisol, and then thyroid as well. And I know that kind of hits home for you with all your thyroid stuff and how that potentially impacted you with your confidence. So with estrogen and progesterone, I explain them like being sisters. So, and this works perfectly with my sister and I. So I'm firstborn, I'm responsible, I make decisions, I'm punctual, I'm usually pretty calm. That's progesterone, okay? So it gets stuff done, it has a sense of consequence. My sister, she's the secondborn, so they can often be quite crazy. So my sister, she's the estrogen. She's wild, she's crazy, she's a social butterfly, she's kind of running around and full of energy. And that's how I describe progesterone and estrogen. Not one of them is bad. Not one of them is good. We need both of them, but they have this beautiful relationship where one's up, one's kind of low, and we want them to be in perfect synergy. So, but I do describe them as the sisters. The older sister, kind of being that responsible one, and then the estrogen, that younger sister, being more of that kind of crazy, energetic one. So when either of those are off, so let's say progesterone, for example, when progesterone's off, you can feel anxious. You can feel kind of like low feeling. You can be indecisive, and that can't help your confidence. You can't feel confident when you can't make a decision. So that's kind of that's an overview of estrogen and progesterone. Testosterone, though, a very, very misunderstood hormone. People think of it to be very aggressive and, like yelling and shouting and, like some steroid guy kind of like pushing through. And it's not. Any hormone out of balance can lead to something like that. So an excess of testosterone can lead to kind of those typical stereotypical symptoms. But testosterone in males and females is beautiful. It's assertiveness. It's decision making. It's having that get up and go in the morning. It's being full of life. It's, to have like that zest for life. That's a testosterone. So we need testosterone to be able to feel confident and to be who we are and to show up in the world. So that's those 3. Cortisol is a stress hormone. And that's kind of where I was talking about with the neck, where when that stress hormone is pumping through your body, you're like a deer about to be eaten by something. You're shaky, you can't make decisions, you're panicky, you can't think clearly, you have brain fog. That's that sympathetic, that's that excess of cortisol. So again, none of these hormones are negative or bad, but when they're in balance, that's where we want them to be. Then we have our thyroid hormones. We have our T4 and T3. Those control metabolism, energy, your ability to kind of get up in the morning and get ready for things. When those ones are off, when they're low or high, same thing. Low thyroid can be, and that's what you've experienced. You had like the weight gain, the sluggishness, the brain fog, just feeling super lethargic and you can't get anything done. You can't show up in the world. You have no confidence. And then the hypothyroidism, like the hyper, that one is anxiety, go, 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 can't think clearly, very manic feeling. Again, you can't be confident when you're not feeling your best.
Yeah, and I love when you say like none of them are bad, because I think like especially like cortisol, we hear like, oh, cortisol, like your cortisol's too high, but we need to have all of these to be like properly function. They just all need to be in levels.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, I learned this the very personal way when all of my thyroid hormones were off. And I remember looking in the mirror and saying like, I can't get up in the morning and I don't know why. So I started blaming myself. Like, I must just be lazy. Yep. I'm lazier than everyone else around me, and I've never been that way, but I guess I am now.
Yep.
And it wasn't until I had like an answer that was really helpful. And I think so many people are looking for answers. I think so many women, because at the end of the day, we don't actually research women. Like we look at tampons and we haven't like actually tested them with blood until when, 2022 or something?
Yep. The first female included in a medical study was in 1993. They have not been included in anything. So we have very little research on anything female related, especially when it comes to our bodies. Very little.
So we're trying to find these answers and not getting them the way that we want to. So I think like finally talking about them and having some of these answers are going to really be helpful, not just for your body, but again, also your confidence.
Yeah.
So where does someone start if they're just like, yeah, that sounds like me, right? One of those things you're like, that's me. Where do they start?
The biggest thing would be tracking. So usually when it comes to hormones, it will become like a cyclical thing. So you start tracking, whether it's in the note section of your phone, whether it's an app that you use, tracking everything. And I'm talking even your confidence, feeling guilty, feeling shame, feeling excited, feeling nervous, feeling like in love, feeling beautiful. All of these things are hormonal components to it. And if they start happening cyclically, so again, about like 30 days from today, I feel confident just like I did today. Those are hormonal patterns. And so I would say starting to track those things and kind of collecting that data on your body is the best way to start.
Yeah. And when you say like feelings and connected to hormones, we don't really think that, right?
It's
we
a
think
massive
like
component.
Feelings are just a thought, like they're just like a thing that happens in our brain and they're not actually connected to our bodies. But can you maybe explain a little bit how feelings are connected to our bodies and our hormones?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give puberty for an example. Okay. So puberty is marked as the change from being a child to turning into an adult. So it's the influx of progesterone and estrogen for mainly for girls, and then the testosterone for boys. So these changes can have massive physical changes, as we know, right? We see a little teeny bopper, he's got a little hairy mustache, stuff like that, right? You get those changes. You get armpit hair. You're starting to stink a little bit. But a really big thing that also happens in those teen years is you see them develop their own opinions. They backtalk to their parents. And that can't be like all teenagers come together and we agree that we're going to rebel against our parents. It's something that's universally happening, which is the hormonal fluctuations. So with hormones, they have a very physical component. So hot flashes, pregnancy, we have a very physical part to our hormones, but then also a very mental, emotional component too. So as kids go through puberty and that progesterone and estrogen starts to rise in them, they can think for themselves. They have a sense of self. They can even look at themselves. They see their legs for the first time. They can actually see their bodies. And they have an awareness to society. And that's why for teenagers, they have a really big issue, I guess I would say, with their peers' opinions. And that's due to hormonal changes in their brain and their cognitive function. Those hormones actually work on the brain to help them have an awareness of what's happening around them.
Yeah. And is there an evolutionary reason for this too?
Massively. We need to stay alive, right? We need to stay alive and progress. And it is. And there's even like the beauty standards. I remember being in grade 6 and noticing that my thighs, when I put them flat on my chair, they touched for the first time. And if I lifted them off, they were skinny. And so my mom didn't teach me that. No one taught me that I wanted my thighs to be skinnier, but something kind of evolution-wise, beauty standard-wise had impacted me in that way that as my brain was developing, I also believed that.
That's really interesting. And how, because we often talk about like the external factors, like, the media and like our parents, but I really think it's interesting how there's a physiological hormonal reason for some of these feelings as well. I actually love this topic of like teens. Yeah. Parents of teens are always coming to me being like, my kids need help with confidence. They don't really know how to stand up for themselves, or they're really having a hard time with their body image. What advice do you have for teens or parents of teens going through a lot of these hormonal changes? How can they make small changes to just feel more like themselves and also get through it?
It's a really
throwing up.
I mean, I don't have children yet, so I couldn't even imagine having to like have those conversations and be the one responsible for bringing that teen into the world and helping them be successful, because it's a scary time when you just don't know who you are and what's happening in your body. So Education and communication is the biggest thing. And that's why I do talk about such taboo things on my pages, is because, and I want young girls to come look at my page and young boys to look at my page and be able to understand and learn that these things are what are supposed to happen, and what we can do to actually support them. So a few things that I would suggest would be open communication. If you don't feel comfortable with your child, then getting them a really, place where they can go and have these conversations and learn about these things. That would be one. There's a few other kind of things that are general hormone suggestions that I would have. One would be food. Food is everything. So, and oftentimes for females, we don't eat enough. And a lack of calories is oftentimes a huge contribution to hormonal issues. The third thing would be stress. So helping and teaching that child stress management techniques at a very young age, because as women get older, and men as well, when you're in your sympathetic, when you're go, you're running from your work and picking up a kid from daycare, your body doesn't prioritize healing and hormones. So for these young children, if we can get them prioritizing rest and recovery and learning how to be in their parasympathetic, they'll have healthier hormones as they develop.
Yeah, and if we don't choose a day to rest, our bodies will choose for us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? And that comes for everywhere.
Yeah.
I also now, what I'd like to do with you is kind of walk through a lot of these like big hormonal changing times and kind of do the same thing for all of them. We kind of talked about puberty.
Yeah.
What's another area that you see often people coming for support in terms of like a big kind of life change?
The big ones kind of in general are going to be like puberty for sure, massive changes. And usually for girls age like 8 to 14, boys like 9 to 15, that's kind of those pivotal times. We could go into a whole different podcast episode on why those times are kind of have differed over the years due to chemicals in our food and whatnot, but for a different time. Then we have pregnancy and postpartum, really big changes in the women's body. We also have menopause itself, and then there's a male version of menopause called andropause. So I would say those are really big changes. Anytime you see the physical body going through something very drastic, so for menopause, for example, it's when the body is done its reproductive years and no longer is going to reproduce. Therefore, there's a big physical change. And when those changes happen, like pregnancy, you created a human being, there's a hormonal component that's driving that.
Yeah. Let's talk about that pregnancy side of things.
Yeah.
Again, myself, I was pregnant, and I'm also pregnant right now, again, thanks to your help. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the hormones are crazy. Like the one that I had recently that I was kind of shocked about is like, what's the anger hormone? Is that just where I just like, my husband's the most amazing person in the world, and I just wanted to rip his throat out for no reason. Like he just like breathed the wrong way. And I typically don't feel this, and something in pregnancy like really brought that up. What's that hormone?
Usually it's progesterone. So when you're pregnant, you want your hormones to be surging so that you have like a beautiful, viable pregnancy. You want that to happen. So it typically happens when you're, so for me, for example, I'm not pregnant. So when my egg is going to, wait for a sperm, doesn't find a little spermie, so then it dies, I raise in progesterone and then it drops. If you have a little spermie that met, so thanks, Steve, for his little spermie that met. When you have that sperm that met, your progesterone continues to rise, and it really wants to thicken your uterus so you can really hold that baby in there. And it's a beautiful thing. However, when it is in an excess like that, it can cause irritation.
Beautiful. Yeah. What are some other kind of major concerns that people have coming to you around that pregnancy area?
A lot of it is anxiety too. They have, and that's going to be postpartum as well. A lot of kind of phobias come through after that. Lots of germs, intrusive thinking, and all of those things are from now. Okay, you gave birth, you have these beautiful surging hormones and your body knows what to do with them. It knows, how to make your breast milk. It knows what to do. Now you deliver. Okay, well now what does it do? How does it get rid of those hormones? And so typically, they come out through your liver and through your stool and you get pulled out. But in society today, we're so overpacked. Our livers are so full of toxins that it doesn't really know how to push everything out and get all the hormones out as well. And so that's a big cause of these kind of postpartum anxieties and issues, is not being able to pull out the hormones afterwards. So I would say, again, that postpartum area, it's getting you with a practitioner who really understands you and will really listen to help you balance out those levels as soon as you can after that postpartum.
Beautiful. That's I've never heard it explained that way. I've just kind of always been like, well, that's just kind of how it is, right? It's how it is. You'll just like deal with it, and you'll have the baby blues, and you might have postpartum depression. And if you do, go get put on medication, which really saved my life when I had postpartum depression, which I'm all for.
Yeah.
But I just like never really had more help or more support or someone kind of explain what's happening to my body. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, time and place for medication. Medication is an amazing advancement in technology. It's super beneficial, but not every person needs medication. Some people, it is a hormonal imbalance causing their anxiety or that depression. So it's finding those practitioners who will do the work and do the testing to balance out those levels.
Yeah. Is there anything else in pregnancy there, or do you want to move on to
There's
menopause?
Tons. We could probably move on to like the next section.
Those are kind of the main ones.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's chat about menopause. I also think this is not talked about because I know a lot of women, once they hit that 40, feel invisible to society, right? So they just kind of don't talk about it, to the point that the fact that I'm 31 and I've never really talked about menopause. I don't really know what's coming. Like my mom talks about hot flashes as like a joke, but I don't actually know what to expect. Yeah. And I'm like probably, let's say 10, 15 years away from this. That feels crazy that like I haven't ever really talked about it. Yeah. So what are those hormones in menopause that we can look for?
Well, and I think with menopause and confidence, there's a huge correlation, especially in like the decline of them. So menopause is, like I said earlier, that the end of the reproductive years. So again, not a bad thing, just a different chapter in somebody's life. And so I visualize kind of like before you go into menopause, your ovaries are beautiful, crisp grapes. You know, they're crunchy. They're the ones in the summer day you want to bite into and the juice goes flying. That's kind of how you are. As you go through menopause, they turn into raisins. And I almost visualize the woman's body in general turning into a raisin. The skin dries, everything kind of like shrivels, her confidence shrivels. It's really, really sad to watch, but it's actually just very misunderstood. So as these hormones, so as progesterone and estrogen, they decline through menopause. We don't need them as much. You don't need the progesterone to get pregnant. We don't need these functions anymore. As they decline, they cause the physical symptoms and the mental emotional. So with the physical, a lot of it comes the hot flashes like your mom talks about. There's weight gain. There's trouble sleeping. There's just kind of an overall feeling of aches and pains in the body. And then with the mental emotional component, there's a lot of memory and brain fog that happens. So I describe estrogen, like that kind of crazy younger sister. She's also very lubricant. So she's like a vaginal lubrication. She's, eye lubrication and joints. And as that lubrication declines, it dries out your brain in a sense too. So a woman, say a businesswoman, for example, as that starts to decline and she's having, cognitive decline, she's not going to feel confident in business. If she has to show up to a board meeting and present and she doesn't remember things anymore, and it's not because she's not on top of her game, it's because her estrogen is drying her out, that affects her confidence.
Of course.
So not only is she not feeling confident in her body because she's bloated and she's worried about having a hot flash and doesn't know what to wear because, in case that comes up during her meeting, then there's also a brain component where her brain's not as sharp as it was before.
Yeah. Now, what can we do about it? What are some of the things that we can do to help mitigate that change and help us manage through it?
Well, and that's one thing that with all these topics, whether it's puberty or menopause or postpartum, again, with the common and normalcy thing, I'm talking about common issues, but I'm not wanting to normalize them. So if you are having hot flashes or memory decline, I don't want that to be, it is what it is. Any of these symptoms, you need to get your hormones tested, see where your levels are at, and get support. So in my practice, I have patients come in and we usually do a saliva panel to test out their hormones. If not, then I work with family doctors and we do some blood work. And then as the results come in, I take them and I find the optimal range, whether you're in menopause, whether you're postpartum, whether you're just menstruating. I find those optimal ranges and I help get you to those areas. So in my practice, I use a lot of supplementation and a lot of botanicals, so herbal things to help. There is a certain time and a place when HRT, like hormone replacement therapy, would come in. And that's kind of during that menopause when your body is naturally declining and not producing much of its own anymore. That's when we would add in the creams and the gels to be able to supplement with those things. But that's one thing that I want to talk about is that these things that we're describing, don't just live with these things. Don't just have your hot flashes and, feel puffy and gross. Know that, those are indications. I want to have support and I want to mitigate those things.
And I love when you say that, because we've just been told that all of this is normal. Yep. That's just how it is. Yep. Even back to puberty, you know, with yourself and your kids, like, well, they're just going to be emotional. Don't worry about it. Yep. Right. Then pregnancy. Well, you're probably going to have postpartum depression. Don't worry about it. And then menopause.
Painful
That's
periods.
just how it is. Painful periods.
Yeah.
Of course you're going to have brain fog and hot flashes. Just pass on through it.
Yep.
But there are ways that we can mitigate that. Yep. And that's a really exciting concept to have.
Yep.
Now, the male version of menopause, I've actually never even heard of this.
This one, okay, so it's similar to menopause, but it actually starts a lot earlier. So in practice, I've seen men around the age of 30 it start to kind of happen with. So it's the natural decline in testosterone, which again, we can counteract these things. I'm just talking about the natural kind of scientific processes. So the testosterone will start to decline. As that happens, confidence itself, I'm actually watching it just kind of trickle away. Muscles start to atrophy and they aren't this kind of buff, tough guy anymore. Their libido goes down. They get sexual issues, like erectile dysfunction, and that can't be confident when you can't perform or, be with your partner in that sense. So again, with the emotional part of it as well, as the testosterone starts to decline, they feel kind of weepy and kind of sad, and they don't really know who's in their body anymore and what's happening. So it is similar to menopause, where they're really rapidly declining and they don't know who they are anymore.
And I think, tell me if what you think about this too, is that like often when I hear hormones, like I think like, female hormones. Like I don't think men even really understand that they have a lot of hormones. Yeah. Do you find that there's a disconnect between women looking for help and men looking for help?
Yeah, I think even a lot of it too. So there's a really big correlation between cortisol, so that stress hormone, and testosterone. And so when I hear a lot about, men committing suicide, I look at it and I think, hey, I know there's, societal pressures and stuff like that, but what is happening? And so for me, I believe that we live in a society that just taxes your nervous system. There's so much pressure, whether it's financial or performance or whatever it may be, which then that cortisol, it kind of eats away at that testosterone. And when that testosterone's low, it is kind of like a depressive type feeling, kind of a hopeless feeling. And I think there's a correlation between that mental health component and wanting to be alive and thrive and that decline.
Yeah. So these are kind of like some of the main changes we're going to feel. Mm-hmm. Something else that I myself go through, and also I see on, again, your Instagrams, et cetera, is the cycle tracking and looking at your cycle and how you can kind of use it to feel better. Yeah. What does that look like to you?
So I base my whole business off of my cycle in terms of being confident to answer phone calls, be assertive, have sessions like this. If you asked me, during my menstruation, if I wanted to come do this, I'd probably be like, I know I'm not going to feel my best, probably not. But right now I'm in my follicular phase, so I feel great. So I want to show up to the world. So how I base my life and my schedule and my business is all actually around my cycle. So the cycle is typically 28 days. I'm 33. Again, it kind of like, not 33 years old, at 33 days of my cycle. And so that's kind of my norm. And I like to break it down into 4 different phases. You have your first phase, the menstrual phase, when you're actually bleeding. Then you have your follicular phase, preparing for that egg to kind of stimulate and then drop down. You have ovulation, when that egg releases and waits for that sperm to come or not. And then you have your luteal phase, which is either kind of your PMS time, preparing for menstruation, or you're going to be pregnant and skip that stage. So in your menstrual phase, so when you're bleeding, your estrogen and progesterone are quite low. So, and this again, I want to remind you that you can change these levels. How I'm describing you might feel, I want you to feel good throughout your whole cycle. If you are feeling off, so for example, PMS, it's a hormonal imbalance that you can correct. So the menstrual cycle, your progesterone, estrogen are quite low. And then you're kind of bloated, feel kind of crampy, kind of like you're bleeding, right? So you're not going to be your most confident. You don't know what you want to wear in case you bleed through them. You're just not showing up as your best self. So that is kind of the time that I say your confidence would be the lowest, is during that actual bleeding part of your cycle. Then in the follicular phase, so that next phase after your bleeding stops, that is when your estrogen starts to rise. You get more energy. You want to make plans again. You want to kind of come out of your cocoon at home. You kind of feel more confident in your body, and that bloating went away, and you're, kind of wanting to wear your lighter color pants or whatever. So that's when the confidence starts to increase. Same thing when it comes to exercise and workouts. I want you to kind of put in more effort again. You can lift heavier. You can run longer. A lot of that energy and like that vitality comes back into your system during that follicular phase. Then we hit ovulation. Hubba hubba. That is when you feel your darnest. Ovulation is when a little bit of testosterone kind of surges a bit, gives you that libido, and this is for nature. This is so that you can procreate. You can attract a mate and create a baby. This is what we're kind of designed to do. So in this ovulation phase, that testosterone comes up a little bit. You're wanting to get it on. You wanting to make that baby. You feel good. Your skin feels amazing. That estrogen's high. Things are really, really good during that time. That is when I would say you're your most confident, is during that ovulation phase. So, which is a really, really cool thing to see that that's how animals are like too, right? They attract their mates. They put out their best, peacock feathers, and that's what humans do too. But our confidence is directly linked to those cycles.
And I think we've been just trained to like pretend none of this is real, and just trained to be like, I know, we're just trained to be like, okay, just show up at work. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how you're feeling. Doesn't matter if you're on your period. Doesn't matter if what you're feeling. Just show up and pretend everything's fine.
Absolutely.
When we start to like analyze this, we can start really seeing where our bodies are at and working with our bodies instead of against it. Now, realistically, I mean, I wish that we could just like, do nothing for that whole week and then like get up and when you're ovulating just have a great time. Yeah. But do you have any like kind of more smaller things that we can do? Let's say there's a woman or a person who bleeds who works a 9 to 5, and kind of has to show up, maybe has kids as well. What are some little things that they can do when they're like not feeling great to just help them feel a little bit more themselves?
A big thing would be with your exercise. So your whole kind of, again, your 9 to 5 work job, you have pressures, you have deadlines, you can't really like get rid of that kind of stuff. It's your home life. It's instead of going for a workout, have a nap. And learning that that's just part of your cycle. You need more rest in that time. So it would be taking time to have a nap, to go for a walk. You don't have to lift heavy at the gym or go to your CrossFit class. So it's creating a life that is around that. Even socialization. I don't socialize when I'm bleeding. I socialize when I'm in my follicular and when I'm in my ovulation and when I'm in my luteal phase. And so it's basing your entire life and your schedule outside of work around those times.
So hormones are very real. And they are actually affecting us every day, and they're affecting everything. And these things aren't normal, right? They might be common, but they're not normal. Yeah. Now, what do you think about kind of using hormones as more of like a negative connotation? Like when you hear like, oh, she's just on her period, that's why she's being mean. Or, oh, she's forgetful, she's just on her menopause. Like that's what's going on. I'm just going through menopause. What do you feel about that connotation? And like, are there ways that we can kind of mitigate that in our society?
Comments like that make me so emotional because these women are really just struggling. And so if they actually are acting, quite erratic during that time and while they are bleeding, she's asking for help. And so when I see that, I see somebody who really just needs help. So that's kind of part of it. The other part would be is that's a lack of information. It's people, again, just saying stupid things and just kind of like, oh, you're in menopause. Okay, well, you're an old hag and you're just, whatever. No, you can be hot and sexy and feeling absolutely your best self during menopause. So I think there's different components to it. One being that people are actually needing help in those times and it's a cry for help and they need support. And the other one being is that society has mislabeled these things and there's a lack of information and people are scared of these things. And when they're scared of those changes, so watching your wife go through menopause, you might joke with your friends, oh, she's, menopausal. That's actually fear coming out, right? And instead of being that fearful, it's asking questions and educating yourself on what's happening in your body and how you can support that person.
Yeah. Let's kind of get into that. What is the best way that we can support people who are going through these hormonal changes?
From an outsider or for yourself?
Let's say both. How can you support yourself? And then let's say that example of like my wife's just in menopause. How can we support your partner as well?
So for yourself, I mean, like each hormone and each person is so complex and it's all kind of different things, whether it's different tinctures or supplements. But the biggest ones, I think I would say there's 4 of them, would be eating enough. especially for females and males, but for females, eating enough. We need to eat actually quite a lot of food to support our hormones. So I think in general, one really, really common way that women have poor hormones is lack of food. We've chronically been in like a starvation type state where we haven't been nourishing our bodies, therefore hormones are on the back burner. So I think proper nourishment and proper amount of calories is really, really important for hormonal development.
And something I find interesting there is we've been taught, well, if you eat less calories and you're skinnier, then you'll be confident. Ugh. But what you're saying is actually the more you eat, the better your hormones are going to be and the more confident you're going to be internally.
Yeah. And not necessarily the more you eat. It's because we don't want to be going into like the crazy surplus of it either. But for myself, I'm at about like 2,800 calories. I eat like 2,800 calories, and other women are like, what? I eat 1,200. I'm like, yeah, you eat what a 2-year-old should eat. So it's, again, this lack of information on how we should be nourishing our bodies. It's not just eating hamburgers all day long and eating 5,000 calories. It's the what you're eating and how you're nourishing your body. So eating fats are a really crucial thing for our hormones. And there is a generational thing where I know that my grandma thought that, okay, fat makes me fat. So if she had avocado, that's fat, it makes me fat. No, fats are for hormones. We need to nourish these hormones to have them do what they want to do. I oftentimes see women in practice who can't lose weight and they're not eating any food. Well, it takes a bit of time. We have to get her to be eating enough food to really work on her metabolism and nourish her hormones so her hormones can do what they need to do and drop down. So those estrogens we're talking about, when they're out of balance, you can have weight gain, but how do we then fix the estrogen? We give them nutrients, we give them the support, the tincture, whatever, to then bring that level down. And it needs nutrients to do that.
Yeah. You said there was 4 things. What are the other 3?
So I would say, actually fat would be one of those 4. So eating enough food, so having enough like calories in your day to properly function. The second thing would be having enough fats in your diet. For myself, I have about like 60 grams of fat per day, kind of give or take. And that depends on how your gallbladder can digest fats and a lot of other things as well. The third thing would be is we are exposed to a lot of chemicals. Most beauty products, cleaning products, environmental things are full of endocrine disruptors that mimic estrogen. So I've had quite a few, even young males, come in with breast cancer scares. And I'm talking age like 25 to 30. And it is due to the estrogens in our society. It's the cleaning products that they use that mimic estrogens and disrupt our systems. So I think the third thing would be is there's actually an app called Yuka, Y-U-K-A, and you can scan the barcodes of cleaning products, of beauty products, and you can rank them of how clean they are in sense of chemicals that disrupt your system. Which
interesting.
Is
and I made that change as well when I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and it made a huge difference.
Yes.
Getting rid of some of the candles that I'm not going to name, but I love them so much, and switching to more like diffusers of like natural essential oils. It made a really big difference, and I feel for me, I almost felt like I just felt kind of like sick. And then I stopped. Now I just don't feel sick anymore. That's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's, again, one of the things that we've kind of just, oh yeah, you use this cleaning product and this cleaning product, but in reality, it is affecting your thyroid, your thymus, your endocrine system. It makes a huge, huge impact. So that would be number 3. And then the 4th one, which is tricky, it's stress. Anytime you're in that sympathetic, you're in that go, you're high stress, your hormones are on the back burner. Your immune system's on the back burner. Your liver, everything's on the back burner. When you're in sympathetic, all you can do is breathe and your heart can beat. The rest is optional. So the more we can teach our society and people in our lives to come out of that state and into our parasympathetic, and it's easier said than done. It takes a lot of effort. But when you're in your parasympathetic, your hormones can really thrive. So I would say those kind of just standardly would be my best options for balancing out generic hormones.
Beautiful. And then from your perspective, how can a partner help, or how can a friend help from more of like a socio side of things?
I think that's where like learning how to communicate comes into play. Like if you were going through something that was, hormonal based, it's just, how can I support you? Just, I see you, how can I support you? And it is doing education. Have you eaten enough today? Are you feeling stressed? Did you drink water today? It's learning how to support people differently than just feeling uncomfortable and turning a blind eye and then labeling it as something.
Yeah,
so
and even my partner will also know my cycle and also knows what part of my cycle I'm in, which is also really helpful when I don't have to
Absolutely.
say, oh, sorry, I'm actually like I'm on my period right now. I'm in my bleeding zone right now.
Yeah.
They already know.
Yeah. And so it's just learning those communications of how, and again, people feel uncomfortable by certain topics. And the more we talk about them and can get them out in the open, we all bleed and poop and do these things. And it's like 2024 and we don't talk about poop. I'm like, people.
Yeah,
Like,
well, let's
it's
talk
very
about
normal.
poop a little bit because
Okay.
we talked about, doing blood tests with your doctors or doing spit tests with hormones and figuring out your hormones there. But is there something we can do at home to kind of recognize what's going on with our body? Is there something that we can listen to? And this is where I think poop might come in.
Yes. So anything that comes out of your body, even if you have a cold and you're spitting out mucus, anything that comes out of your body is telling you something. So your poop can tell you things, the color of your mucus, the color and texture of your blood. It's like a receipt that you'd get from the grocery store. It's telling you what is happening inside of your body. And if you can tune in and just even take a look at these things, it can tell you so much. So all of my patients, when they first come in, I ask them just very casually, how's your poop? And some patients are great. Other patients have no idea what's happening down there. They poop, they flush. They don't even remember if they pooped or not. Taking a look at your poop before you flush tells you so much about your body. The color of your poop, if it floats, if it sinks, if it leaves marks on the bottom, if it's gassy, if it's hard to poop, if you feel relieved after. All of these things are indications of what is happening in your body. For example, if your poop is floating, you poop, it's floating on top. Oftentimes that means your body's not breaking down something. Typically it can be dairy, but it can be lots of other things, or it means your gallbladder isn't producing enough bile to break down that food. And again, a very simple fix by just taking a look at your poop.
That's so interesting. And Brie, when you asked me, I was like, my poop actually floats, and you just don't think about it. And then you were like, well, it looks like you might not be digesting things properly. So we kind of like helped like find me a new,
and then we do work on your gut health.
A new gut health,
And
exactly.
break it down, and then you can absorb your food better.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's very cool.
Yeah.
Now, what is the best piece of advice you've received around confidence?
I think that the best thing would be is that people don't actually really care that much. And I know it kind of sounds bad, but that was when I first started getting to the gym, that people actually weren't watching you. You're not that big of a deal, kind of in a sense. And that's a really good way to kind of get started with something, is that people aren't really watching you. I couldn't tell you right now what your pants were that you're wearing today were, right? Like, people just want to know you for you, and they don't really care about the extra stuff. So don't worry about looking like an idiot or failing per se, if you want to even use that word. I think it is that, yeah, people really don't care. They just see you for you, and how you make them feel is everything.
That's such a beautiful answer. And I get this answer a lot from people too, because I think that we're so focused on ourselves, and we like, of course, the world revolves around us because we are us, right? And I mean, we learn that it doesn't, but at the end of the day, our feelings, our emotions, our thoughts are the ones that are inundating us each day.
Yeah.
But when we really sit with it, people aren't thinking about us the way that we're thinking about us.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the worst piece of advice you've received when it comes to your confidence?
Probably just breathe. Like, just breathe. I'm like, okay, but do you know how our nervous system works? You can't actually just breathe, and that's actually not in your brain, it's in your body. No, you can't just breathe your way out of a situation. Like, what you feel is valid, and there's so much more to it than just breathe and go do it. Like, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. And what is the most important thing?
With?
Exactly. I'm going to keep it very open-ended because I always love hearing these answers.
The
Always
most,
interesting.
it's kind of what I've been trying to like hone in on, is that a lot of these things that we feel, anything that doesn't feel good, whether it's being tired or sluggish or whatever, that is not normal. And I really want people to understand that we have made these things be very common issues, but no, they're not normal, and they're very fixable. And no matter what practitioner of anything tells you that it's normal, or you're just in menopause, that is not an answer, and you don't have to accept that as an answer.
Yeah. Now I want to talk a little bit about resources.
Yes.
What are some of your favorite resources for someone who's like, okay, this hits me, all of these things feel right or wrong to me.
Yeah.
Where can I kind of go to start the journey?
It would be searching for practitioners who specialize in these areas. So it'd be people, women who specialize in menopause, and finding practitioners out there that specialize in those areas. Going to a general practitioner is, great for certain things, but maybe not great when it comes to hormonal issues. Another thing would be is that I am producing hormone courses. They'll be starting this fall, which will be amazing. And they'll be really, really good ways to educate yourself on what's happening and then what to do. The follow through of what to do, whether it's seed cycling or, changing your diet or whatever it may be, of now what to do when you don't feel good.
Yeah, and we need support in knowing the how and the why of things, which we just don't get from our society. Yeah. And I do think that's changing. Speaking of society, I want to know, is there any trends in hormones that you're like, oh my gosh, this is not working? Okay, tell me.
There's a few that get me so revved up. HIIT training. So these 20-minute HIIT training workouts are the devil to me. They are my eye starts twitching when I hear, and I'm not going to name the names of the certain places, but I know you and I have talked about them before. It's this HIIT training, which it just tanks your adrenals, and then your adrenals are just drained, and then it tanks your sex hormones. And so for me, it's like a no-brainer. I'm like, you want to have bad hormones? Go do HIIT training. And so a lot of these women who are pushing, oh yeah, it's quick, it's fast, your kids can be in daycare 20 minutes, pop in and out, you feel great. They're leaving on a cortisol high, and they come home to their husbands later in the day and they're cranky and they're snappy and they don't feel good, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse. So I would say the HIIT training for, quick and easy and get toned and in shape is my biggest pet peeve right now.
And then what would be kind of your suggestion for exercise and movement?
Slower. So for someone who's having actual hormone issues, there's actually big concerns, I have them do very minimal exercise. I love the gym, but I do big rests in between my lifts. I take days off, I rest, I do low impact stuff. So I would say more walking, weights with longer rests in between, so not like a bunch of CrossFit jumping around type stuff. And then rest days. Rest days are hugely important. And then the other thing is that I always tell patients, after you're done a workout, put on one calming song. Put on one calming song, lay on your back, and when you leave to get up in your vehicle, I want you feeling calm, not jacked up. If you're leaving your workout feeling jacked up, you're in that cortisol surging.
That's really interesting. Great. Is there any other trends?
Instagram's quite a thing when it comes to women doing certain things. There's a couple of products out there that claim to fix everything and fix your hormones and fix your gut. And I feel like if these influencers are using these words like gut and, even hormones in general, they don't really know what they're saying. They're making money off of these things. So remembering that influencers are making money off of these products, and they're targeting audiences of, I would say, not weaker, but people who need help. Moms who are tired, have no energy. If you make a product and you use their trigger words, you're going to sell to them. And that really bothers me because it's not actually healing. Taking a generic product for your gut health or your hormones is potentially a recipe for disaster.
And what we've talked about is, again, very similar to confidence. It's those small steps every day.
Absolutely.
It's those small things, those small changes that we can make to help us feel like more like ourselves, help our hormones. There is no, special pill that you could take to fix everything. It's about taking those next right steps. Mackenzie, thank you so much for coming in today. This was super eye-opening. I'm so glad we talked a little bit about the why and the how of hormones. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Aw, thank you so much. It was tough.
Disclaimer. This podcast is designed for entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Always consult with relevant experts or professionals for personalized guidance.